on. Oh, there it is. That's all I wanted to say. Hold on.
Very nice.
Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on Tuesday night on such short notice. My name is Matt Smith. I'm a regional organizer with Food and Water Watch. We work to protect clean drinking water and safe, healthy, sustainably produced foods. And we're here tonight to learn more about Ford's toxic legacy. And I'm just going to leave it at that because we have some real experts and local community leaders who will talk and speak in more detail about the issue. I do want to first off thank all the organizations that helped make this possible, starting with Ringwood Cares and the Ramapough Lunaape Turtle Clan, who are really leading the local fight here in Ringwood. And this issue, of course, is bigger than just Ringwood, right? And so we're going to hear about not just the local impacts and what is what's the harm that's been done by the persistence of toxins in the local environment here, and from the folks who are living with those toxins, but also what it means for the presence of this pollution and persistence of this pollution within a half a mile of the state's largest drinking water supplies in the Wanacue and Monksville reservoirs. So with that being said, thank you again all for coming, and I'm going to hand it off to Chief Vincent Mann.
For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Chief Vincent Mann. I'm the Chief of the Turtle Clan, which is Passaic County. We are basically about a mile, or half a mile, not even maybe a quarter mile, from the beginning of the 500-acre Superfund Site. If you know the history of the site, just really quick, Ford had a company called Ringwood Realty. They lost the right to build executive housings and all kinds of community stuff up there. When they lost that right, they almost immediately at that point commenced to dumping toxic waste in yards, on the side of the road, mine shafts and air shafts, open ground. I think Jan Barry I think there was like a 2-acre area which was just paint sludge. When I saw that picture, it was really amazing. So currently, then it was listed as a Superfund site, delisted in '94. It took 12 years to get it relisted, which was shameful in itself because through Jan Barry and the records work, they found that a lot of the most of the toxic waste was in the exact same spots that they had actually found it in the first time. So we have issues there. So it got relisted, I think it was 2012. And then we are here today with minimal movement. They're doing groundwater remediation, remedial investigation now. They have 40 wells. One of the reports that just came out of those 40 wells, 39 tested positive for having 1,4-dioxane in it. There was, I believe, 32 of those wells had readings that were over the limit for New Jersey's groundwater limits. Some were as high as estimated 3,600 times the limit. So they ranged everywhere from Peter's Mine all the way down to the mouth of Park Brook, which goes into Sally's Pond. So when they tell us that they find it at the mouth of Park Brook, we ask, is it in Sally's Pond? Their answer is no, we found it at the mouth of Park Brook. Well, you can see where that goes, right? So a big part about this is actually getting our knowledge that we have and the experts that we know and the people who are living here on the land and been directly affected that can give us that knowledge, and then we take that and pass that forward. People like Dr. Chuck Stead, working over in the town of Ramapough, they removed 97,000 tons of toxic waste and material in 3 years, I believe it was. They have one more area to go. In all the years that this has been a Superfund site, they've only removed 60,000 tons, first of all. I'm pretty sure that there's way more here than there was there. And so, we're working on trying to, if you're in any of the CAB meetings, what you'll hear is that, we're only complaining and wanting to stop the CAB from going on O'Connor. That is not true. right? It's just that this is the one that's right in our face, right? It's the one that we can do something about as of right now without taking a larger legal action. Not to say that that would not be coming down the road. You sit 1 mile above the Wanapee Reservoir. You know, Budweiser used to get their water from here. Budweiser back in the day, I think they tore up their contract. One would wonder why. The most popular beer in the world, and the most pristine waters, right? So those are some of the, that's like the background history. You know, we never really had a voice. And for those people who came to our community, Lisa Jackson and some others, say that they were going to be standing up for us. And they took us down to Washington, D.C., and we felt good for a minute. The reality of it is when we left there and came back home, all of the things that they promised were lies. And our people continue to die. We just lost 7 people over the last month and a half, 2 months. That's a lot of burials, a lot of funerals. Some hit really close to home. You know, 51-year-old, 54-year-old, 47-year-old, even an elder that was living in Easton, PA, which was kind of ironic, right? The Treaty of Easton. But I went down there and I performed the services down there. You know, and every time that we do one of those, we lose a part of ourselves. You know, we have to give some of that up. And, you know, we can't get back our family members, you know, and as much as we like to, you know, we have to try to find that understanding in there. You know, and the EPA, unfortunately, has made the decision that human health risk is basically non-existent right now. We had a great meeting, was that last week or the week before, with NYU. They came here with a board of scientists. Something that we scream and yell at to the EPA, we're glad that you checked our kids. We were the kids back then, and we need to be checked for lead levels. You have a high rate of dropping out from schools, of not having, you know, not paying attention, and the list goes on, even to myself. You know, I had to go to a private school for 2 years, and then I had to go to 2 times out of the week, I had to go work with my hands because I didn't have the capacity in their eyes to be who I am today, which I guess we proved them wrong. So one of the things that came up in there was that somebody said, well, yeah, those tests are expensive. Well, we learned that the tests are not expensive at all. It's the machine. And it just so happened to be that this one doctor that was here said that he knew somebody who had a portable x-ray machine who would be working on that. So a lot of great things came out of that meeting. I hope that we actually have more of those from NYU in a larger venue, maybe even at their school, which is not too far from here. So we sit here today trying to garner support in a larger community because, you know, the Ramapo are over here sick and dying. We've been fighting for the last, 40-something years to protect that water and protect our lives. You know, we've been trying to change the general opinion of things for over 4 million people. And it wasn't until we started to change it from talking about the Ramapo to talking about the larger community that things pop up, like Ringwood Cares, right? That's one. Myself being awarded the Russ Berry Award for my efforts to try to save our people, not just our people, but 4 million people who drink that water. They're down in Patterson or Newark and Jersey City and all these places where they're doing the water tests and they're going, oh my God, we can't drink this water. You know, the water's bad. But guess where they get their water from? They get their water from over here, you know? And they're just, so we've gotten Ringwood on its feet, you know, and we got Pompton Lakes has its own issues and we can kind of put that into what's going on. And I think that it would serve us all best if the Ramapough Lunaape Nation via the Turtle Clan is that face. You know, we don't have to be the experts. We can tell people what's happened to us. You know, the experts is Chuck Stead, and then rooms get filled with bodies of people who are considered to be human beings, not just people. So we're looking for support. It's not just, you know, I mean, there's other things that we want to do. I mean, maybe the relocation is something that we need to do. You know, maybe they need to build a huge water filtration plant up there where they're taking water out of the ground, bringing it up and going through and putting it back into the ground, because they do that. I was even sent a link today, somewhere in New York, something with a V, LaSalle or in New York, Superfund Site way back in the day, their wells got contaminated, they created a new well. The issue is that the area is still very contaminated, so they're actually using thermal, something to do with thermal. They heat it with chemicals maybe. Down the ground, it comes up, it goes through filtration or whatever, and it goes back into the earth clean. So it's not like those things can't be done, but they're not going to be able to do that with us there. As far as the recycling center goes, just think about it. Chuck Stead will tell us that down where he is in Torn Valley, there's 200 trucks a day. So 12,000 trucks over the course of 2 years or 3 years to remove O'Connor alone is not really that big of a deal. When you consider that there's the potential for 200 trucks a day to be going down that community road there, you know, where kids play, where elders walk, you know. So what would happen? We have sinkholes that happen already. We used to have 80-something houses there. We're down to 48 houses. You know, there used to be upwards of, I said 800, and my cousin Jack in the back of the room today, we were talking about it, he said he thinks it was closer to 1,200 souls that used to live there. And, you know, so for us in this community, for our community, we need to find a way to be able to bring that back. For those who have moved out, their parents moved them out, or the parents moved out, you know, they have to have that ability to come back to be part of their culture and their community, because we actually need each other. You know, when you were little kids, if people live in northern New Jersey, you know where your next door neighbor used to come over to your grandmother's house, and you know, they would share vegetables and somebody would cook. It still happens like that for us. You know, we need to be able to fish the Wanacue Reservoir, which is right now cut off for us, and we're going to be working on getting that changed. I'm also saying that it may be polluted, but it's one of the closest areas that our people can actually get to acquire fish. You know, our deer population. Chuck Stead and I, there was a program over in New York. You know, they were doing a culling. We took the deer, we gutted the deer, and 2 of the deer actually had cancer. And, you know, deer don't just sit on this side of that fence that they got on Peters Mine Road. You know, they can travel. Maybe they have like a range, I don't know, 7 miles or 3 miles or something like that. So there's a lot of other things happening, you know. We haven't really had that much water. One of the things that I said to the EPA was that, listen, don't go testing the water in August. You know, testing the water in August means that you're looking for a certain result. Test it when the rain comes, when all that stuff gets to come up. And so in May, actually it was May, it was March, when the town of Ringwood actually did their test. But what we found out was that the EPA actually knew a complete year, almost to, it was like 20-something days short of actually being a year that they held that information from us. And that is the problem, you know. We need to be able to stand up and speak. I've been asked all week to go to Standing Rock, you know. As much as that is a major concern, and Matt knows better than anybody, I actually got him to come off the pipeline one time, a few years ago. It's not that I disagree with what they were doing, but you know, we have to honor our treaties with the government that we get even today, and we do that. So he was gracious enough to step off that day from the pipeline. So, you know, my heart's out there, but this right here, I wouldn't even have a heart in my chest if it wasn't for my family, that some are sitting here, some who are no longer with us, but in spirit, and the rest of the community that's still sitting here today. They've been so affected that, you know, it takes a lot. You know, my cousin's sitting right there. I have a hard time looking at her because I just want to cry, right? Is it okay that I say? You know, her son Colin, 10 years old, he died of that cancer, you know. How can the EPA sit there and say that it's okay? You know, we have so many people with so many illnesses that it's not okay. How come there's nobody sitting outside with these mobile medical clinics or trucks or whatever, you know? It's not a third world country. You know, we're not third world people. We can go to the top of our mountain, look at New York City. You know, we deserve to be treated as human beings. And you know, even if we weren't native and we weren't a tribe and we weren't a clan, we'd be the oldest, largest surviving family in northern New Jersey since somebody decided to write a book. You know, and that itself is worth saying something about. You know, the Fords can't say it. You know, Rockefellers can't say it. The Harrimans can't say it. They have their names on all those things, but we have our names on things too. You know, Ramapough Trail, Ramapough Mountains, Ramapough River, Ramapough College, even to Reverend Ford, right, back in the 1800s, who had nothing to do with this part of it. He came to us and was preaching to our people in the Ramapough Mountains. His father became ill, so he wanted to learn how to deal with indigenous populations around the world. He taught religion to us, and then he left. And when he left, he went to Syria. And you can Google this because it's there today, even though all this bombing is going on over there. But he was like a boys' school type of thing, but in the years later became a refugee for, you know, black, red, white, orange, and pink. And that building still stands today. When you look at the front of that building, the picture says Ramapough on it. And it doesn't say Ramapough because they had no other name to put on there. It was because of that understanding of caring, loving people that was here, and that followed him all the way across the oceans to get to where he was. So we have things with our name on it too. Even a ship from World War I think it was the USS Ramapough. You know, and the town of Ramapough, obviously, is named after us too. So enough for me right now. I'm sure I'll be willing to answer questions. I'm going to hand it over to Chuck Stead, and thank you.
Is there anybody here from the borough of Ringwood? I mean, who works for the borough of Ringwood? No. I'll be darned. They're right over there. You just walk across. Right there. Not a long walk. I'm going to have a couple of things to say about them when we look at these slides, but the first thing I want to say is, yes, it was 97,000 tons removed in town of Ramapough. We will, in all likelihood, by the end of this year, complete the removal of any of the paint sludge in the town of Ramapough, except for a couple of sites that are hard to get at the utility rights, but they've been GPSed and they will get them in time because the easement rights have to, it's a legal thing. And they're very, very small. So with 97,000 tons, by the end of the year it'll be over 100,000 tons. Of course, up here there's another 200 or greater thousand tons still waiting to be dealt with. The difference, if you don't know this part, between what has happened in the town of Ramapough and what is not happening in the borough of Ringwood is up here there is a lack of political will. There is no question that is the difference. And it's historic because in the town of Ramapough, those people down there, that municipality back 30, 40 years ago, not the current leaders, but the leaders then, took no money for sludge. It was done illegally at night on private property. And up here in Ringwood, there was a transaction and money was taken. And as a result, the EPA, in their investigation, said, well, if it's a push for a cleanup, Ringwood will have to pay a portion of this. I remember the meeting we were at with the EPA said, we're not interested in bankrupting Ringwood, but Ringwood will be responsible. So the current political leaders of Ringwood would be sitting on that, and they don't want to be at the helm when that happens. They simply don't want that, and frankly, they support nobody in this community. Nobody. And in Ramapough, what's interesting in Ramapough is the politician that I work with closest there, the town supervisor, Christopher St. Lawrence, has done an amazing job of negotiating that cleanup to the degree that not only do they have to mark any of the paint that they can't get at the moment and have to come back, but in addition, and this is written into their agreement, if more paint is found, well, by me, at some future date, any future date, they're obliged to come back. And the state of New York has completely agreed with this, the DEC agrees with this, the DOH was in on it, so they're familiar with it. Everybody's in agreement with that. That can happen there, and nothing happens here is absolutely criminal. There's no question about that. And to take it a step further, I'm going to show you these slides because this is the comparison between the two Superfund sites and what was proposed up here with the O'Connor waste field. I prepared this, my students and I prepared this. I work at the college and with the town, and we prepared this for the Environmental Law Justice Project in New York. And they're using this to spread the story all around there too. So we've got a lot of people in the legal field and the advocacy field in New York learning more and more about this. How are we going to advance this? You want me to stand over there, or she wants me to stand over here, so that doesn't work, there's no battery. So this is, I'm sorry, should we turn the lights down?
Yeah.
Some of the pictures are dark because they're aerials. Just try that one.
Closer to you.
Yeah, you're still pretty good? Okay. So this is the Ramapough landfill. This is across the New York border down in Ramapough. That's the New York State Thruway, the little orange line of Route 17. And the landfill is right in here. I'm going to talk about the landfill and the recycling center, which is up there, because that's a cap, and that's a recycling center. And of course, what's being proposed here is that be built on top of this. So we're going to illustrate why that's absurd. That cannot happen. But also the complexities. It's a pretty big landfill. The complexities of what's going on. Paint sludge, by the way, was all removed in here. This is the well field, and it was all removed up here along the, you can't quite see it, along the Torn Brook. That's where the 97,000 tons came from. So go again, next picture. And that's a closer view, and you can see that a landfill is quite a complicated operation. There's a lot of infrastructure to it, which I'm going to show you. And there's a water treatment plant in association with it, as well as detention ponds. And there is a stormwater runoff on the surface, and there's piping underneath for the groundwater movement, because one of the things that has to be dealt with a capped landfill is the fact that you're capping it from the top. The water that lands on it will run off, and you need to capture that, but you're capping it from the top. You're not capping it from the bottom. It's not like a federally devised toxic waste landfill, of which there are such things, which have a belly. They don't have bellies, which means that groundwater will move through them. So this thing required a lot of groundwater infrastructure. They had to study the flow of the groundwater and then contour it to where they needed it to go in order to deal with cleaning it. And that's why they have a water treatment plant down there. Okay, again? And that's the water treatment plant. And there are the various retention ponds, because that's for the surface water and that's for the groundwater that's going to move there. And once it's treated, it's piped right into the Ramapough River. You can see how close it is. Okay? So this is the water treatment facility, and the surface water flows over the top, as I mentioned. And this is a state-of-the-art facility, and it's monitored, I believe, twice a week in terms of what's coming through. There are long periods of time where hardly anything comes through. And then there's a heavy storm, or there's a winter thaw, and there's a tremendous amount of migration, a tremendous amount of volume. Go ahead. And that's the cap, and again. And it's another view of the cap. So it's a mighty big cap. Granted, this is a bigger cap than they're looking at O'Connor, but notice how high it is. It's high. It's built very, very high. And that's because there's a lot that has to go on top of it, which I'll show you a diagram of. So O'Connor would be raised. It wouldn't be like they can just keep it at that level. They're going to have to bring it up a good deal. Go ahead. And that's basically the what is the inside of the cap. What I want to draw your attention to is the fact that groundwater is down here. And the reality is, at O'Connor, the groundwater, this is the ideal. The ideal is everything is above the groundwater. This compacted clay built above the groundwater. That will not be happening. The ideal is we're going to build a landfill and cap it in modern times, and we're going to layer all of these materials in there, and then we're going to run any leachate that's going to come through the system up through the pump. Again. But this is generally what happens. Generally what happens is you have waste, and you start with graded fill, and then you have some venting sand, and then the polythene membrane. That's essentially the geotextile. That's the thing that cannot be penetrated. You cannot break through that. There's a geosynthetic clay liner on top of it. So what you have for things that are percolating down there, if you have methane gas or what have you, and we all know about methane gas, and frankly, at Peter's Mind, I was up there with your cousin, with one of my students once, and we couldn't stand there for very long at all, because it's more than methane that's burping out of the mine up there. And I have photographs of this. I took pictures while I was there. I spotted 5 areas of bubbling, and it was constant. Okay? Now methane essentially, excuse me, but it's a fart. It smells like the earth is farted. That's methane. What I smelled up there, and I've smelled methane in a lot of places, we've done examinations of old mines and things, and I've smelled it, is entirely different. It's entirely different because it is a cocktail of substances that are down inside the Peters mine. I would suspect the same material are down in the waste in the O'Connor landfill field. So this low-density polyethylene membrane cannot be punctured. This is important, remember as we go along. It cannot be punctured. To capture the gases that would be down in here, they put a pipe all the way down, and there's a burp hole. There's a burp pad, as it were, at the membrane area, and when the gas bubbles up and builds up enough, it will rise, push through the pipe, into the pipe, and the little burp pad lifts up and the gas can blow out the top. And you'll see this on those big Superfund landfill caps. You see those white PVC pipes and they're sort of bent over like a little elbow. That's because you need to give it an escape hatch to the gases that are in there. The same thing would be here. You would have to have some way of having an escape hatch for any gases that would build up. And then you have all these materials on top of it, but these are all penetrable. Water can break through these materials, and that's why you also have to have, just below the surface, some infrastructure to move the water along. But more importantly, down where the waste is, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do about the flow of groundwater there. This is put in, the waste is already there, the flow of groundwater can move through the waste. It isn't like they dug a very deep chamber and found that it was completely sealed and put the waste there. Okay? Okay? Now this is back in Ramapough, and this was a photo of seasonal flooding in the early 80s. This was before the cap was put in on their landfill. This is the active landfill over there. So you can see that this was a very foolish place to have a landfill because there was a constant flow of water every time it rained and runoff. Next one. And in this shot, the cap is starting to be constructed. This is a little bit later. But again, even during construction, cracks me up, that's a little bit of a siltation fence, as if it's going to do anything. Even before construction, or even during construction, they were having a hard time containing the water. At this time, the Torn Brook was constant soup. It was, which is near the area. It was like, sort of like almost coffee colored, constantly. And smelled a lot because stuff was coming through. While they were constructing the cap, they had to keep digging into the materials that were inside the landfill. And very often they broke into materials that they had to quickly bury again because the smell was so bad of what was in there. They had to cap it just for the construction workers. The last 2 years, that dump was closed, but it got an extension for 2 years, and nobody in the community was told who got the extension. Town of Ramapough, to their credit, this would be Herb Reisman back in his day, actually went public with this sometime later. It was Avon and Letterly Pharmaceuticals. Go ahead. Next one. Keep looking at her for some reason. That's the cap. That's the cap. So this is during construction. And it's literally, it's all worked in. It's all glued together, it's sealed, and it has a lifespan, by the way. It has a lifespan. The one up there has a lifespan of 25 years. And they have to test it. They don't have to dig it up after 25 years. They have to dig down and test it. They have to test its strength, its durability, see if it's breaking down. Kind of a hard thing to do if you put a recycling center on top of it. Kind of difficult to get at that point. So go ahead, next one. So again, this is the landfill cap illustrating the groundwater flow. You have to have groundwater monitoring wells, and if you go over to Torn Valley Road, you'll see these wells. And those wells are now checked twice a month, actually. But in heavy rains, it picks right up, and it's about once a week. But standard is only about twice a month. And what they do is they take samples, they check the water, they see what's coming through, and they do find things. There's a limit to what they can find. If they start to have too many indicators, then they have to go to stage 2. They have to go to a situation where they have to find out where the material is coming from, see if they can isolate it. But what's happening over there is after these monitoring wells, it's going to the water treatment plant, which means they're monitoring what's getting to the water treatment plant, which is good, but they're also not letting it escape. Okay, go ahead. So this is an example of the diagram of the flow movement below the super cap at the high point. There'll be 3 of these. Look at all the arrows. This is essentially, they're trying to follow how the groundwater is flowing so that they can relate to it with their infrastructure. So the infrastructure that they're building in here has to relate to that flow because they can't, gotta have a plan, they can't completely change it. So they gotta kind of go with the flow, as it were. And in some cases, they're sending it out to an open conduit, that's an open air conduit, and that's the material that's along the surface. And in other cases where it's laid deeper, it's being captured by pipe. I'm describing something very complicated and also very vulnerable. So we'll get to that when we talk about putting a structure with a lot of trucks on top of it. Go ahead. That's the middle area. One more. And the mountains are over here. The Torn Valley Road is there. There's the water treatment plant. And as you can see, the intention is to bring it all down into this direction and deal with it, and eventually it will flush out that way. So it was really, it was quite an operation. And when they built it, they made mistakes, and they had to rebuild it a number of times. And the mistakes were not discovered until 5 or 6 years later. One mistake was not discovered until 10 years later. So you discover you made a mistake with a cap that you built an entire recycling center on top of. How do you correct it? Okay, go ahead. So this brings us up to here. So this is the Ringwood site, and this is the full O'Connor waste field, and that's the current recycling station that's up there, the small one. And there's some homes. Go ahead. Oh wait, go back one. That's where the power line comes through, where the cut is. And you'll see images of wetland all through here. All these little paths and corridors are open surface wetland, which also means there's a stronger flow of groundwater there. Go ahead. And that's further up. See, there's the houses, and that's further up, and the Peter's Mind is up there. And it's again, that's the flow there, and this is the area that's going to be constructed. It's going to go that way. Go ahead. And this shows you, that's the site, that's up there, and there's the Wanacue. And you can read it. Okay? So you've got the concern about the surface water, which we're all aware of. The bigger concern for me, looking at what they're proposing, is the groundwater. And the groundwater does what it does, it travels. And the amount of fracture in the rock bed as a result of about 170 years worth of mining history in this area from Peters and Cannon means there is no record of all those fissures. There's some record of some fracturing, but we're talking thousands of potential fissures. So it's a labyrinth down under there in terms of how groundwater is moving. Go ahead. And this shows you, these are the wetlands, that's where the power line is. These are the wetlands, this is a wetland, that's the big site, and that's the Ringwood Creek. Go ahead. So let's see, the green line, I always get this backwards. Oh, the outer perimeter is the, let's see, facility, slab cover, that's right. So this is the slab cover. This was the area when they drew these, they were proposing paint stays here, paint is removed from here out. That was sort of the general idea. Since then, it's changed. Paint that's here gets shoveled back into under here. So paint doesn't have to move very far. It just sort of moves, 50 yards or so. And so this structure would be built, this footprint, generally speaking, would be built on top of paint. Go ahead. So this one here shows the closeness to the water. It starts to show the topo of the structure. They have to create various elevations. It's fairly complicated, but these are the two major areas. That's where the water is going to go. And they're aware of a lot of surface water. But look at the Ringwood Creek. Look how close it runs to the outer perimeter of what would be what they're calling their cap. Their cap, which I showed you images of before. Their cap, their synthetic polythene textile, geotextile in there with the sand and the clay and so forth. Go ahead. And what this is showing is the existing drainage and the proposed. So existing drainage is kind of hard, you can't really see it. But this is the existing elevations, and that's the intent. And the existing drainage is all coming this way. Over here, the proposed drainage is sending it into these little triangles here and then piping it out. That's the general idea. So it's still going that way. The groundwater version of that doesn't exist. The earlier maps that I showed you showing what was happening at Ramapough with the infrastructure that was built deep into the ground under the waste isn't here. Okay, go ahead. So here's what is here. Those are groundwater contours. So again, that's the road, there's the houses, these are some of the areas where paint was being dealt with. And these contours, the elevations continue to drop. 505, 500, 495, 490. So that's a general sense of groundwater flow. That's the structure, that's the whole structure, and that's the constant movement of groundwater there. Anything goes wrong with that groundwater, any of that groundwater pick up, percolate up, and this is what happens. You build a structure on top of things, okay? And the idea is you seal it. No, you haven't sealed it. What you've done is the rain that comes down is no longer going to percolate directly through the ground. It's going to be stormwater runoff someplace else. What has happened underneath the structure is the avenues of how water will move will access it. Surface water, it won't. They'll pipe that off. The storm drain will send it off. There's no plan, because there really can't be, to pipe down and suck up groundwater so nothing will migrate. I've talked to hydrologists about this at length. They're in complete agreement with me. I've talked to scientists working with Ford. What do you think their opinion is?
No problem.
No problem. Go ahead. Okay, this is the existing facility up there at the north end on the road, on Peters Mine Road. Go ahead. And it shows you it's a relatively small facility. It's maybe annoying to some folks, but it's not high impact. Go ahead. And it's drive-in. Go ahead. And it's got the clothing drop-off. Go ahead. It's cardboard and so forth. It's not a big compactor. It's not big trucks coming in. The main thing is it's not a revenue flow. The reason why this is so important to the borough of Ringwood is Ford is giving them a gift. We will build this. This will be yours. And if you build it, they will come. You will now have a revenue flow. And the thing is, there'll be other things built. Because as I'm about to show you in Ramapough, you build one and it's functional, it's doing well, you build out from it. You eventually get a transfer station, and then you get a giant co-composting facility. The stuff continues to build up. It becomes a very valuable asset. For Rockland County, the Solid Waste Management Authority is an extremely valuable asset. Not that anybody who lives here has an opinion about that. Go ahead. So this is over in Rockland. That's up on top of the hill above the capped landfill, and that's where their recycling structure is. It's further away up the mountain. Go ahead. And typical trucks coming in to deal with recyclables in the forebay. Go ahead. And that's the sorting materials. It becomes quite an operation. As Chief Mann pointed out, at high point of material flow, it can be 200 of those kinds of trucks a day. Go ahead. And then a transfer station came right out of this project because, hey, they're doing well. We're going to build onto this. Herb Reisman, the day that they broke ground up there, I was up there, and somebody said, but Mr. Reisman, why build this here? This is a quote from Herb Reisman. And he said, look around you. There's nothing here. Nobody lives here. He couldn't say that here. Nobody from the borough of Ringwood could justify putting a larger facility in up there, before we even talk about putting it on top of a landfill. Nobody could do that up here because you are here. Go ahead. And then there's a weigh station, which is necessary for transfer of materials, trucks in, trucks out. Go ahead. And that's a typical truck. They're not little pickups. They're big vehicles. Go ahead. And so there's our site, looking through the fence up there on Peters Mine Road. Go ahead. You can see I'm mentioning the wetlands in the back. You can just see through. It's in the winter, it's sort of hard to see, but it's right back there. Do another one, and another one. And you can just read that. Can you read it in the back? It's a grim reminder of death is found at this little memorial attached to the chain link fence along the O'Connor waste field. We can just know that if this thing got built, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. If the paint doesn't come out of the ground, it's going to continue to be worse. It's not going to get better. That's the thing that we're faced with. Okay, any questions?
How many acres are we talking about?
Up there, in terms of the structure, it's smaller than the one that we did, or that was done over by town of Ramapough. But the cap is bigger. Not bigger, but bigger than the structure. So I don't know. I'm thinking it's probably about 8 to 10 acres, depending on how they lay it out. But it could be more.
And how much money does it take to do it correctly?
You mean to remove the paint? Okay, that's a really good question. I think the O'Connor landfill could be cleaned. Now, keep in mind, what happened in Ramapough is their projections for what was in the ground, both at the well field and further up in Torn Valley, were much lower than what they found. They never projected they'd be up to 97,000 tons. They projected the two together would be about 30. But in the well field, 42,000 tons in the well field cost Ford approximately $15 million. And the remaining 55,000 tons further up the road cost close to 40. So the O'Connor field would not come anywhere near that. My assumption, just by not looking into it, is it's going to be lower than that by... Oh, okay. Can you turn it off?
Yeah.
Sorry. The O'Connor field would be probably closer to the range of maybe 12, 13, depending on how deep the stuff goes and how far it's spread, because there's no way of knowing until you start digging it. But they would probably start thinking it'll be about 7, and hopefully their cutoff would be 15, because that's pretty much what they did with the well field, and they hit the 15 mark. To move beyond the O'Connor, the tougher issue, the Peters mine and the Cannon mine, is anybody's guess, because we know the tonnage is greater, but also the access is so far more complicated that, you know, maybe O'Connor would be close to 15 million, and we're going to go well over 100 million on dealing with the other 2 mines. Because it's the efficacy of how you withdraw the paint, which requires pumping the water out of the wells to access the paint. And pumping the water out of the wells requires, just like they did in Ramapough, portable water treatment structures. We had 2 of them. We had 2 water treatment portable stations put in. All that water has to be treated and approved of by health officials before it can be allowed to go back into a creek. It wouldn't go back into the mines, because now you got to try to pull the paint out. But then the other problem is when you take pressure, when you take water out of the mines, you're reducing water elsewhere, and that's the sinkhole problem that we have up here. And so you pull water out of the mines, water moves elsewhere, and then you're going to have the sinkholes start to happen again. So really, I mean, I'm for a 2-stage thing. Let's do O'Connor. Let's get O'Connor done. And then the second stage, if the mines are going to be done, the people need to be moved. We cannot risk having the people here if you're going to do the mines, if that's what's going to happen. If you put caps on the mines, which is the next side of it, it would be much safer for the people, and it would not be as expensive as removing it. But if that's going to be what happens, there have to be monitoring groundwater wells all the way down that mile to make sure that the stuff that's in the mines isn't making its way to the water cubes. Because again, we don't know where those fishes go, but our assumption, just by talking about the dioxane, the materials can move, they can penetrate. And there are other solvents mixed in the paint that would help the material to penetrate, to move it. Yeah.
So I'm listening to you talking about, Peter's mine, okay, danger. What most people do not understand is that Peter's mine is up there, but it connects to Miller Mine and Cannon Mine. It connects over on Margaret King Ave. These mines all connect. They go to Stonetown, they go to Wanacue. So everybody thinks we are the only ones being jeopardized, but they're told before, because they don't know, where they're going to end up either. They have to think serious about all these mines. The danger that we all think.
It's elaborate. There's a huge net.
Because it could be, I've seen it, when they were drilling up there, how Cooper Mine opened up, we lost our street because it was connected. And most people think they're safe there, not where mines are, but these mines go far and wide.
And that's why this story needs to get further and further out into the greater Ringwood community, because this does really affect everyone.
It does. And I know for a fact, I'm sorry. Now, here's something else I wanted to say too. Now, I know that you call it the brook, right?
Right.
Park Brook runs into Sally's Pond.
Right.
Now, I was over to Ringwood Manor yesterday now, and I'm not sure if it might run higher because right now they got a lead issue over there.
Yep.
And they got a crew over there.
Yep.
Trying to work on the situations about the lead that they found over there on that property.
Yep.
Where the DEP was trying to stay out of this picture. But I think we have to make them step up and they have to start facing some responsibility.
Yep.
Because Peter's mine is on the DEP land.
Yep.
There's plenty
One
of
of the things that I actually have out right now, it's been about a month and a half so far, but I actually emailed an official letter, asking for an official response from the EPA in regards to the fact that the town of Ringwood is listed as a PRP, potential responsible party because they are the ones who own O'Connor. My email to the EPA is that if the town of Ringwood is a PRP, potential responsible party, then the state of New Jersey surely is a PRP, potential responsible party, because they own Peter's Mine. At that point in my email that I had sent to the EPA, I said that if you are not going to list the state of New Jersey as a PRP, then what you need to do is remove Ringwood as a PRP, and Ford needs to be held accountable for the absolute full cost of everything going into the future and everything that's already been done, and pay that back to the town. If they don't do that, there is going to be a huge problem. Why should the town, listen, and we have issues with the fact that the town actually owns that land, but karma really works in weird ways, right? That land was taken for lieu of taxes, and it shouldn't have been, because there should have been no taxes on that land until there was a low-income housing bill, right? So, once I found out that the reason why the town was responsible was partially, there is another little reason, but mostly because they own that land that has toxic waste. They didn't know, right? That's what their contention is, the council over here. We didn't know that land was contaminated. Right, because if you knew the land was contaminated, what would you have done? You would not have taken that land, and then it would have fell onto how to, right? So if that is the case, and that is their law, and that is what their law is, the state of New Jersey is going to be a responsible party. And if the state of New Jersey becomes a responsible party, what do you think they're going to do for it? The state of New Jersey is going to say, hey, you donated us land back in the 70s that you knew for a fact that you polluted. They're going to say, you know what, you're going to pay for this, and they're going to take them to court. And then when the town of Ringwood needs to get on that bandwagon, along with the residents of this town and the residents of our little town, which is all one complete town, right? That is what needs to happen. Everybody in northern New Jersey needs to stand up. West Milford, Wanacue, Palm Delays, everybody. So the response that I got back, because I was emailing him every single week, I'm like, I want my answer, give me my answer. I asked you in official capacity to give me this answer. Finally, he says to me, Joe Dower said, Chief Man, you know that this is a legal question that has to be answered by council, and as soon as they return that information to me, then we will forward that to you. The other thing that I requested from them in this as well was that the town had 5 operating wells. The town only has 1 operating well that feeds its entire town. Because of that, and because of the lack of the capacity of the pumps to put water all the way up by Vivian's house, when we have a fire, guess what happens? Whatever that, they've got to call in 2 towns with tanker trucks that come, and by that time it's too late. You know, so our health and safety is at risk on top of it. They're using the well, which is down by Beatty Road, Beatty Lane, right? That's at the edge of Ringwood to Wanacue. Think about it. That's where the water comes from that feeds this entire town. 97%, because there is 3% that comes from the Wanacue Reservoir, which may or may not be tainted, right? Because we don't know what chemicals, they're not necessarily testing for the chemicals that we know that are here. We know that they're tested for chemicals, but that's at drinking water standard.
But
That's not at the standard back here, though.
They test by their filter, well, they don't test.
Right.
They test
So,
in water.
that second thing that I asked from them was that I requested the EPA to test all of the mines, I mean, all of the wells, to include in first of the cistern, right? They need to test all of them. And if they're finding that they have chemicals that are in there, that needs to be addressed, because you know for a fact, those wells have been sitting now for maybe not 7 years, maybe 5 years, somewhere around there. Those wells have been sitting, but the pressure is still coming, right? And so that stuff's being built up in there. They told me, well, we have to ask our geologist. I said, whoa. I said, stop a minute, because that's what they sent back to me. I said, why are you going to do it? Why are you going to do it that way? Try doing it in reverse. Go test it, find out that there is an issue, then trace it. Where's it coming from? It's only coming from one place. How it gets there, we don't necessarily know, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And so I have that out to them as well, that they need to test these wells. Because you never know when Ringwood's going to say, guess what? We don't have enough water capacity, a bigger pump's not going to do it, we need to add another well on the line. Hey, we got these 4 sitting here. What do they do?
When you talk about, well, we got to talk to our geologist. Down in Ramapo, for years, people were saying, what are we gonna do about this? What can you do? And the response was, Ford's got some scientists, they're gonna be looking at it. The DEC said the same thing. We're gonna have our scientists look at it. In 2005 was the first time I had students start to do field research and do measurements of the stuff, and we started documenting it. 2 years later, we had enough documentation that we just started sending that stuff over to the DEC on a break, like every week they got another letter. And I actually did letter, I didn't do email, I didn't trust email, I actually did hard copy stuff. And eventually, when they came back, and the town of Ramapo negotiated for that, for DEC to come down and talk about how this is gonna happen, they held a meeting, and they put up a bunch of slides to talk about what they had found. They hadn't done any work, it was all my students' work. It was my students' documentation, it was their measurements, it was their findings, it was their photographs. It was Jeff Welch's photographs. It was all theirs, according to them, and it was to appease the public. The mistake they made is they agreed with us. And from that point on, we had them on our side to then negotiate with Ford. Ford did not want them to do this. The other thing you mentioned, that I again, talking about scientists and experts and specialists, and I've had my dog work for 3 years now down there with the Ford scientists. Every Ford scientist, hydrologist, geologist that I've worked with, every one of them has the company's jargon, and then you're out in the field, and they say, John, keep doing what you're doing, you're right. Every one of them. One of the points was, I was talking about, I was measuring the migration of the lead and how it was moving through the soil, and the standard is, it doesn't move. In other words, they've rewritten the law of thermodynamics, there's no physics, the stuff stays where we put it. And we get out, and they say this, we get out in the field, well, of course it moves. Just keep measuring it, keep that. So even the Ford scientists, once you got them alone, don't cost me my job, Chuck. I didn't say this, Chuck. You know who I'm talking about, Jan. You know the people I'm talking about. But they would say this to us, which was good for us to hear, because it gave us a little energy to keep going with the thing. But it also means that they knew if they spoke the truth, they lose their job.
Speaking on that, just really quick. Just in the paper, Scott Fallon did what he put that article out there, and what he said was, two wildly different results. The town of Ringwood spends everybody's money like they should have done, right? Whether they got it from the insurance company or from Ford or from everybody's taxes, and had that water test done. When they did, right, it was used a lab that used the state-of-the-art equipment to find it at a lower level. Ford has had to have been mandated since 2014. 2014 is 2016. They had to be mandated, right, to use those new standards that the EPA had put out. They were supposed to find exactly the same thing that Ringwood had found. Ford has deep pockets, Ringwood doesn't, right? So they couldn't go to a lab and say, hey, I can't prove that myself, but, right, they went to the lab and said, look, here's a split sample. Your split sample that we gave you just happened to be in contaminated containers, and our split sample didn't. They're not saying that, but how do you have those two widely different results? And it goes all the way back, because the Ramapoughs need to be the people who are sitting there to set a precedent. And I tell you, we're going to do it. We already did it with the pipelines, and we're going to do it again. When the EPA has a Superfund site, the polluter should only have to pay and have no say whatsoever how it gets done, how much it costs them, or anything else. Because the reality of it is because they go in there and they say, okay, clean it up.
And
94,
this is completely
they have to be
doable.
certified.
Down in New York, what St. Lawrence did down in New York was, as they started telling him, well, it's going to be a secure area, and Chuck can come once a week when we have our meeting. And St. Lawrence says, Chuck comes and goes whenever he wants. He comes and goes whenever he wants. And they said, well, there's a security issue. And I said, then we'll give them the certification. You're on our land. They defended the land. St. Lawrence defended the land. Nobody lives there, and he defended the land, as Reisman would have said. Nobody lives, but he defended the land because he knew it was the drinking water that was being challenged there. Did you have you had your hand up there? Yep.
May I speak candidly about Mother Earth? May I speak candidly about Mother Earth? Okay? I'm part Lenape, but my tribe hails from the Muscogee tribe in the border. I vote Southern Chief. And I feel Mother Earth right now is really going through a change. The Lenape's, as well as Cherokees, as well as any ancient culture. I have quartz crystals that shaman carry, okay? I have a pink quartz, which means the red race. I'm part Native American. I'm also part African because of my heritage. That is a Skokie quartz. This is a citrine quartz. I'm also part Asian, and of course the white quartz. Now, Mother Earth wants to change and wants to help every race on her. But she needs help. She's crying desperately. That's why you're having all these things happen. Not only here, but the whole world. She needs every race to help her to change. Because she's changing, we are also changing as human beings. Our ideas are changing. Old ways are turning different. We have a brand new type of person called millennials. And it's time that we have to take it, first of all, you have to take it to heart first, okay? I have changed me. Yes, I have changed me. I am changing. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here in Ringwood. Ponte Lakes is the same problem. I live in Ponte Lakes. We have to speak as one voice, as one person, because that's the way it is anyway. Okay? That's all I have to say.
Okay, Eric just told me we have time for one or two more questions between me and the chief and whoever.
I just have a quick question. What is happening on the state level? Anything with Peter's Mine? Is there anything going on there? I mean,
What's happening on the state level with
I know
Peter's
you
Mine,
wrote,
she's asking.
you know,
On the New
you have
Jersey.
been in contact. Have they done anything? Are they
The
involved?
state of New Jersey, right, in regards to the Superfund site?
Yes.
The state of New Jersey is a support agency. What that means in a Superfund site, the state of New Jersey sits there and says, yep, that is literally all they do.
This is really a significant
The-
thing,
the-
because
the
this
problem-
is why Ramapo is not a Superfund site.
Absolutely. And the problem that exists is, guess what? We are the residents of Passaic County, first of all, where the hell are they? Right? We are the residents of the state of New Jersey. And the state of New Jersey has a moral obligation, a legal obligation to defend us. Our right to be able to live free and clear, our human rights, has been violated here for 50 years. Never mind all the other stuff. I can tell you things that will blow your mind, right? But just from 1960s forward, how is it that this has been allowed to continually happen and go on and go on and go on? And you have experts telling you, you have excellent writers and field investigators who've gone out there and risked their own very lives to make the story come to light.
What can we do?
We have to change the people who are sitting in that building over there, and we have to change the people who are sitting as representatives of this county. We have to change the representatives who are representing the state of New Jersey.
So,
Who gives away however many hundreds of millions of dollars to a corporation who totally devastated that down there in Exxon? Right? Pennies on the dollar. And so that's what happens. What has to happen is that corporations, if they want to consider themselves to be people, then they need to be sued and treated as people. How else can you force a corporation or the federal government or a simple little town like the town of Ringwood to do what they're supposed to do? The only thing that you can do is come together, find lawyers that will stand up and stand there and say, listen, this is the law. I didn't write the law, you guys wrote the law. But I'm a lawyer and I can interpret it for you. Laws can be interpreted in different ways. Sooner or later, somebody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, right? When the reality, the scope, of the magnitude of what's happened here, and the people start to realize how far away that this is actually affecting people, what do you think is going to happen? It's the reason why the EPA doesn't say too much. It's the reason why the state of New Jersey doesn't do too much. I mean, think about it. 1/3 of the population of New Jersey gets their water from right there. Right? So, I mean, this is disgusting, but if I walked over to that river right there and peed in it, it's going to come out there in Jersey City. Somebody's faucet. Right? Literally. I mean, I use it as an excuse because it is disgusting, because what we're dealing with is even way more horrific than that.
See, so the state can step away from a Superfund site, because that's, like, the Superfund cap on the east side of Torrent Valley Road has some paint sludge under it. That's one of the places where we know there's some more. But the county and the DEC supporting it, that's the state regulatory agency in New York, could follow the paint right up to the cap, but they couldn't go under the cap to get the paint, because that's a Superfund site. The town of Ramapo has to take care of the cap But the town of Ramapo and the DEC cannot okay going under the cap. So the resolve on that was they're monitoring. Once a year, they're monitoring to see, no, the town has to monitor itself. It's monitoring the flow of anything that might come out from under the cap. But this is crazy. We know the paint's there. We had Ford supplying the funds, but Ford knew, yeah, but when you get to the cap, it ain't gonna happen. And that's, again, because it's state versus, rather feds versus state.
We have a very unique situation, right? And that unique situation I just explained to you. The town of Ringwood was not listed as a PRP the first time around. Second time they were listed as a PRP. Probably because they were pressured by, the EPA was probably pressured by Ford in some way. Right? I'm just making an assumption, but that assumption is probably more a reality than not. Our jobs, my job, is to take not just our clans and our tribe's voice, but all your voices, right? And I put it into my brain, crunch it all around, and I spit it out in words to the EPA. New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, needs to be forced to be a PRP. If they are forced to be our PRP, then everything that we know, everything's going to change. Everything is going to change. You know, I've actually seen the deed. I've actually sold the deed for Peter's Mine to the state of New Jersey, 1972 or 3, right? Ford donated that land to the state of New Jersey. It took 3 years for that process to happen. Ford did not pay the taxes on that land during that time. And the person who signed as the governor was not even the governor of New Jersey at the time. He became the governor after, but not at that time. So now you're talking about digging up a lot of worms where people are going to have to be responsible for their actions. I'm all for that. You know, if I go out there and I step out of line, guess what? Right? I should be reprimanded.
So is there a clear title?
And that may even be a question too. You know?
I would want to see clear title.
That probably is a question as well.
We have one more speaker, Eric.
But that is, so just really quick, I mean, the state of New Jersey needs to be forced to be a PRP. And that's what I'm doing right now, is to force, at least force that question out there, right?
Right, Congress
Because-
people, or?
No, to the EPA. This is a legal question. If the town of Ringwood is listed as a PRP because it simply owns that land that Ford contaminated, the state of New Jersey owns that land that Ford contaminated. They should be listed on there as well. If they're not going to be, then Ringwood should not be. All that money should come back, and guess what? Everybody here should have a reduction in taxes, you know? Just saying. You know, that's how much money it's been.
So thank you, Chief. So we do have one more speaker that we want to get to, but let's first, everyone, please give thanks to our speaker, Dr. Stead. I think Chuck hit the nail on the head in the very beginning. This is a question of political will. That's the missing ingredient here in this community that is not present, that was there, that led to a proper cleanup in the town of Ramapo. So our last speaker, Lisa Chiang, is one of the members and leaders of a local organization called Ringwood Cares, who's actually organizing actively on this issue. So for everyone that is asking themselves this question, what can I do? You know, I'm just an individual, but how can I contribute to this effort? You know, this is a great time for all of us to come together. As was spoken, you know, very eloquently in the back, that, you know, we have an earth in crisis, a home in crisis. So now is the time for all of us to come together. So please welcome Lisa, who will be talking about some of the ways that we can get involved.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming out on such short notice. We have a great turnout. I'm so happy about it. So basically, Ringwood Cares just formed organically in about April of this year, and what we've been doing is working to organize the community as a whole to come on out and fight against a cap on this landfill and really fight for a real cleanup, a complete cleanup, rather than what the council is currently presenting us with. So the big effort that we've made so far is through our petition. So a lot of you may know already, we were gathering signatures at the end of June. We presented it in early July. On July 1st, we presented it to the council. They certified that petition and held a public hearing on it on August 2nd, where for about 4 hours they listened to people talk about why they didn't want a cap on O'Connor landfill, and then came back from executive session to decline to even vote on the ordinance that we presented them with. They cited serious legal flaws, which we disagree with. It's the most I can really say about that. So our big challenge now is fighting what they believe are these serious legal flaws in order to make sure that this question gets on the ballot and the people of Ringwood can actually vote on the issue. When that happens, what we need is a community that will help us spread the word, that will get people to register to vote who are not actually already registered to vote. We have some voter registration forms here tonight in case you happen to know anybody and would like to take them with you. They come with a free, there are 2 pages. The first page is the form itself. The second page is basically a free envelope. You fold it, you mail it in, and postage is already paid by the state of New Jersey or the county, I'm not entirely sure. But it's taken care of for you, you don't have to worry about that. We will be looking for people to help, go door to door and tell people about the question, explain to them why it's a good idea to clean up O'Connor instead of leaving it capped, why we're fighting for our ordinance. We'll need people to make phone calls to do that as well, and to advertise, to talk to your friends and neighbors, to anybody that you see, to let them know that this is an issue that's going on. One of the biggest problems that we've had in this community is communication, okay? Getting information from the council, making sure people know that this is what's going on. When we first started talking to people a couple of months ago, what they were telling us was, oh, that's still happening? Or, what do you mean, the Superfund? What's that? Where is it? People don't know. They don't know where it is. They don't know what its circumstances. They don't know about the cap. They don't know about the EPA's original recommendation for an actual full excavation of the contaminated soil there. They don't know about different ways that we can clean up the water in the mines, which is something that we've asked them to fight for in the petition. And so spreading the word is going to be the biggest help. We have a petition coming around. It's basically a modified and condensed version of the petition that we presented to the council. If you fill out your information there, we'll have it. We can put you on our mailing lists. We can put you on our email list. We can get you, information when we're ready to organize. We have one of the flyers is this one coming around. It's all different ways that you can get involved, all different ways that you can help us out and join our efforts. Gives you information about how to donate because we are about to mount what may be a relatively expensive legal battle to make sure that everybody here can vote on that ordinance in November. On the back of it is information about all of your elected officials. Local, I've got every council member and the mayor, their contact information, so local information's there, the county freeholders, our state and federal legislators, contact them all. Because really the fight here, while we can mount it right now locally against our council and hopefully work with them to come to a better resolution, the fight is bigger than just what's happening here. It's not really the council we're fighting. It's the situation that we're in. It's Ford as the company who's dumped here, who's responsible for the toxic contamination. It's the EPA who's putting our small town in a position to be an equal party at a negotiating table with Ford, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, which is insane. And so we need to do whatever we can to contact the people who have the power to help us to fight. We have a sample letter you can send to the EPA to ask for an exemption at O'Connor landfill. The town acquired that land through foreclosure. They actually fought being its owners because they knew what was wrong with it, and then we got stuck with it anyway. And that's one of the big reasons that we are a responsible party in this. It'll be a lot easier for our elected officials to do the right thing and clean it up if we are not financially responsible for that, because what it comes down to is they're really afraid of this big price tag, and to them that big price tag is scarier than contaminating the water supply of 4 million people in the state of New Jersey and putting the human health and the environment at risk by leaving it there. So we need to do what we can to make that fight easier, and to participate in it as the people who are ultimately affected and who will ultimately be affected in the long run as well. I don't know. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, we can take a few more questions.
I just wanted to say something. council meeting what percentage of the population of Ringwood voted in the last election, it was 23%. Now, one day a year, we have as much power as anybody else, but you have to get out and vote. We're all disillusioned with politics and, you know, is my vote really going to count? Well, if my vote counts, your vote counts, your vote counts, we'll win and get these people out of their office. They're not helping us.
Start with
They're
the
public
locals.
service.
Start with the locals and then.
That's what I'm saying.
Then do the state. Let's go to the county, then
23% of the population put those people in office.
But right now, they're not up for elections here. Right.
They're up for elections.
This has been going on for how long?
Yeah.
That's the only way we're gonna get the existing mindset out of those chairs.
And the ballot question could be seen as a referendum on the current administration, right? Because they're the ones that are pushing this compromise cleanup. They're the ones that want to leave the waste on site, and if it weren't for Lisa, Ringwood Cares, and the community members who are stepping up in this moment, that would be the plan. And that is the plan if we don't continue fighting and doing something about it. So the next 2 months and 2.5 months really will be absolutely critical for that fight. It's going to take everyone in this room, when you get that email from Ringwood Cares, to respond to it. When you get a phone call, respond to it. And don't just respond as an individual. Tell when you go home tonight, tell your friends, tell your family, have those conversations so that we can continue growing this movement in this critical time. This could be not only a huge win for Ringwood, but it could be a precedent. We have New Jersey leads the state in Superfund sites. There are currently ongoing fights right down the road in Pompton Lakes, but also on the other side of Bergen County, and really everywhere. And the current preferred method is this cap and to leave the waste on site and let the polluters off the hook. So here in Ringwood could be a precedent-setting effort. So I urge all of you to contribute in whatever ways that you can over the next 2.5 months.
Local government is where we're going to have the most immediate impact. So that's where we need to really focus our efforts. And up here, if you happen to know people who would be interested in more information, wanting to know how to volunteer, there are extra packets of information up here. There's extra cards for Ringwood Cares that have our contact information, how to follow us through the internet if you want to, on our website or Facebook, all of that kind of stuff.
I would just say, if you get the emails or if you sign up for updates, add info@ringwoodcares.org to your contact list, or check your promotion bin. Sometimes that Gmail will hit your promotions folder until you move us over and say that you know us.
Yeah, it's obviously we all agree the political will with this council is a dead end. So, I mean, has there been like outreach to all these counties that are getting the polluted water? Has there been outreach to the politicians there and the residents and all there?
So we actually did start that campaign. We started that, what was it, May or June, that we went to a couple of different town meetings. And the council has actually reacted to that at their meetings. They've, tried to publicly admonish the people who have gone. And so mostly that is the effort of right over here. He's gone to those towns, he's let them know. We've had mixed results, and we haven't been to every town yet, but that's something that increased manpower will certainly help us to address. So if we can get together volunteers who are willing to go to those other towns on the nights of their council meetings, we already have a prepared statement that you can read if you're not comfortable speaking extemporaneously. And
is
we
there a
have
way to
follow-up
like maybe
information.
mail some info to residents in these places that?
Because that's what I was just about to say, that
Pompton Lakes, so I'm here. Okay, yeah.
we started discovering a lot of what the councils were saying and their borough managers were responding with, is that they're in contact with our borough and our borough manager and the EPA, and that they're hearing that everything's all right, which they don't really need to heed the warning.
Right.
So we were thinking of different ways of bypassing the council and going directly to the community. Because you go to these council meetings hoping that the community is going to be there, but similar to what's going on in our borough hall, their council chambers are empty too. So it falls upon deaf ears and then just gives the councils like fuel for their fire to just continue to discredit.
That's why we need to hit the residents directly.
Right. So we want to clear Chuck Stead's calendar for the next 2.5 months and do this in every town that pulls water from the Wanakee Reservoir. And there's other things we can do besides informational meetings, but it starts with everyone checking the volunteer box on this sheet, responding, and really being proactive And I saw a few more hands raised.
And I will just, really quickly, just so you don't think that we're not thinking about the outreach.
Oh, I'm sure, I thought it was a stupid question, but I
No,
figured it out.
And it actually raises a good point. So for example, and not to go on like a minor social media tangent, but like the best way for us to connect with people and get our updates out there is through the Facebook posts, through the page. Somebody in Montclair is not necessarily gonna like Ringwood Cares, so we have to get there via advertising, which takes dollars, which right now we're just focusing on riling our own community up because it only goes so far. But that's
Yeah.
another way that we'll be looking to rally.
And the next level beyond that too, right? If we talk to these elected officials, whether it's local, county, state, or federal, and they don't respond, then we need to hold them accountable. That means protests, street actions, bird dogging them on the campaign trail, whatever it takes to raise the noise and create a crisis that forces them to respond to this situation. So we have just a couple hands here.
Has the water been tested in the Wanakere Reservoir?
Yes, it has.
And what was the
And
result?
so, well, basically the current response of the North Jersey District Supply Water Commission, who controls the reservoir, is that they have filtration systems. And so even if they are finding trace amounts of any of the contaminants, right, they're being told it's not coming from the Superfund, it'll never reach the reservoir. And they say, well, if it does, it's a drop in the bucket for us, and we have filtration systems. I don't think that that's a safe way to manage it, but that is their current response.
Has anyone separately, other than the commission itself, tested the water?
Not going up there.
From the state, from the DEP,
Yeah.
going to the United Nations?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the World Health Organization standards today and ways of recommended dealing with that.
So if that's not done, how do you prove your case?
You have to start with yourself, though, really, and this is where it's important. You have to be secure in yourself and your own heart first. I can't emphasize that enough. But also, you must give guidance to Mother Earth, who all races used to honor Mother Earth, okay? All races. The only race that is doing it still is the Native Americans. The Europeans, the Asians, and the Africans used to honor Mother Earth. You have to give guidance to Father Sky or Father God and Mother Earth in your own heart. She will tell you, she and he will give you power above yourself to get this. But also, remember, an individual can do much when connected to another.
That's right, and that's a great idea. And so the reality is we have, Ringwood Cares is a small organization, and so with all of the things that need to be done, the reality is that they're not all going to get done, and not all leads will be pursued. You don't know which is the right one that's going to break it. So if you feel like that is, you feel passionate enough that that's the answer, is to continue to call on state, federal, and international government bodies to do water testing, then I would urge you to take that on and communicate, with Lisa and others, and let's see how we can get it done.
You got all the addresses here?
Yep.
Everybody, send out an email. You just have to write one email and just send it to all of these addresses. If everybody here does that and you keep passing that around, hopefully.
One more question, just really quickly beforehand. I want to let everybody know, if you're interested in starting to work with us, in learning a little bit more about how to actually participate, and feeling more comfortable about going to other local meetings or making phone calls or going door to door, we'll be having a training session at the Ringwood Library at 7 o'clock on Wednesday next week. That's August 31st. Okay, so you can add that to your calendars, and we'll see you August 31st, 7 p.m., Ringwood Library.
Will that come in an email too?
Yes, that'll be an email and an event on the page and all of that.
And we'll see you and your friends and your family and even strangers that you got to meet every now and then.
Yep. And your question was sorry.
I was just going to make a recommendation that, ask the county, because those county freeholder meetings are televised, ask them for time to make a presentation, and you have to go to every meeting. You have to, as a former professional agitator in neighboring West Milford, you have to go to meetings, you have to become a thorn in the side.
Be persistent.
And, you know, you can have, they only give you 3 minutes. I don't know what it is in Ringwood, but at the county, it's 3 minutes. So you can have prepared statements that one person after another, you just pick up. I've seen people do that, and there are 2 freeholders up for re-election this year. It's amazing the things that, when they want to get re-elected, the things that they do.
Oh.
I have not heard any chatter about this at the county level. I mean, everybody reads the newspaper, everybody knows what's going on, but as in terms of taking a stand, there are really good people on that freehold.
They have never been to a CAG meeting. They have never been to, I'm on the CAG for at least the last 7 meetings.
How many times
I have
have you
never-
invited that to you? You have to call people every week, whenever there's going to be a meeting. I mean, it's hard work, it sucks, but you don't get anything done unless you are like a persistent, okay? And you have to be persistent, you have to be consistent, you have to have a consistent message. You can't be super emotional, you have to talk about the facts, and you have to get a lot of people going and saying the same thing. It's the only way things get done.
Sure.
And vote.
Get off my soapbox.
And vote, right? Yeah.
And vote.
Very, very sound.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Oh, we have more?
Do you have one last question?
Yes.
Just more of a statement, guys. My name's Bob. I worked with the Fenimore landfill in Roxbury for the last 4 years. And what that nice lady said there is absolutely true. You have to be persistent in your fight here. And I know it's been such a long fight, and it's been a very emotional fight, and everybody has suffered because of this. But it is so important to attend every meeting. We dodged Chris Christie on the airwaves, down at Seaside, at his house, at meetings. I mean, we were in his face all over. The one big difference between Fenimore and here, though, is there's not a big company in the middle of it. And that played to our advantage, and we actually got a cap on the landfill. But being persistent and being united as a group is so important with that one message. And it's going to be a long fight, I can tell you. And the government out there is going to delay you and push you off and make it as hard as possible to get the goals that you guys want. But you just got to keep going for the people, for everybody, for your kids. For that little baby right there is so important. Right.
Yeah, Jan.
I have a question. I have a question for Chuck. How much does it cost the town of Ramapo to monitor it? Do they have to pay for a treatment plant on their landfill?
Well, that's it. They get some support on that. So there is some financial support because, you know, it's not like they wanted a Superfund site, so they do get some. And so I can't tell you the finished figure that they pay because I don't know what the percentage is. But it contributes to their budget, you know, that support, and then they send engineers there, like I said, as frequently as I said. I'd say annually the budget for it is probably about $15,000. That's the annual budget. But
something
yeah,
forever.
yeah, oh yeah, and that's forever. That never stops. And the other side of that is, if the thing gets damaged, they also share the repair of the thing. So even though it was a Superfund cap and was paid for with the Superfund agreement, which is part industry, part Fed money, in the future, as it gets damaged, the town has to start interacting with the. I don't know. That is an adjustment to Superfund that happened in years since the thing was built. Early 2000s, there were adjustments in terms of responsibility, and I think that was because caps were aging to the degree that if people weren't monitoring them appropriately, it could be considered their responsibility. There is one on the northern end of Greenwood Lake that nobody monitors anymore, and my theory is that's why Greenwood Lake that northern end is so filled with algae. There's stuff coming out of that cap, there's stuff leaching out of that cap, but I haven't gone up there and done core tests, but my theory is that's what's happening. And that's because if you go up there, you'll see there's woody plants, stalked plants growing through the top because they stopped mowing it. And that, remember that polyurethane geotextile that I showed you? it's getting punctured. And it's been getting punctured now for the better part of 17 years, so I think that's why that algae problem is not correctable until you deal with whatever's in there that's contributing to it. Yeah.
I have a question, this might be a silly question, but after O'Connor is cleaned, if Peter's mine is not filtered, won't that one for that out, so we keep coming to this?
Yeah, they're gonna have to, after O'Connor would be cleaned, they're gonna have to do groundwater wells to see which way the material's coming from, because material could still be coming out of Peter's mine, absolutely.
Have they done a hydrological study up there at all, or no?
I think, let's see, that would be a question for Chief Mann. I think at one point, New Jersey DEP was involved with a hydrological study, but it would be old. Here's the thing, I was there the day that they were doing some test wells, and they were doing 2 inside O'Connor's mine. They wouldn't let us come in and do it because they have a different agreement here. But I had my students, Ryan, you were there. We were out on the road, we were testing water that runs in that trough right along that trench, right alongside Peters Mine Road. And they were in there with a big truck and they're running their test wells. And all of a sudden, everybody got soaking wet. They broke through and they hit water that rushed up. And they did everything they could to then cover that and sustain it. And when they drove their equipment out, it was soaking wet. It was muddy, dark, nasty water that shouldn't have been driving down the road, dripping all over the place. And the next day, I was in the field office at Torn Valley, at our Ford site down there, Ramapough. And what the Ford guys were doing, I got there early. It was just gratuitous. I got there an hour early before our meeting, and they were unloading equipment, and what they were unloading was a submersible camera and 100 feet of cord and a monitor, and they were testing it. And they said, "Can you help us with this, Chuck?" And I'm helping them test this. Because sure, I'll help you test it, because eventually you're going to tell me what it's for. And we went out and put it in a bucket of water to see what the visibility would be and so forth. And eventually they said, "Yeah, this is up there at Ringwood." They punched through something there at O'Connor, and there's a lot of water, and they want to know if it's a tunnel or not. That's a shaft. You punch through, that's a shaft. It's not groundwater. There's a big cavity in there, and there's still no clarity on what that is. But that was a shaft, and then when they punched through it, water came up. It's like hitting an artesian, an underground artesian flow. It popped up. That's a shaft. So if that's a shaft, then whatever's in Peter's mine is also under the rock base that's below O'Connor.
Were they wearing suits?
Very nice ones, and they got wet. They looked really unhappy when they came out, and we took some pictures. Remember, Ryan? We were photographing the trucks. They drove those trucks down Peters Mine Road really fast. They were unhappy. They did not want pictures because it complicated everything they were doing. I love it when the complications kick in. They start thinking, we don't have a budget for this. The contractors just come up to do a thing. And you kind of can't blame them. They're freaking out. We don't have a budget for this. We're not supposed to have to deal with this. This is going to have to go to another level. So they went up there with the cameras. Yeah.
When was this?
This was, Brian, when did we do it? Spring?
Yeah, it wasn't so long ago.
It was in March. Yeah.
And that brings up another great point. Document everything. If you have a video camera, you have a still camera, everybody has their phones, you see something, document it. Because pictures speak 1,000 words.
And I'm just going to assume that it didn't make its way into any official reports or anything like that.
There is a report that something was under the O'Connor, and they will further investigate. But no, it's going to go away. Yeah. To me, that's the end of the recycling center right there. You've got another cavity under that ground. That should be the end of it right there.
Right.
Oh, I also know when they went up with the camera, they went down and they couldn't see anywhere because the water was it had a light on it. It's like a laparoscopic view. It had a light on it, but it was so murky they couldn't see more than a couple of inches. But there was a flow. That's the other thing. It went down and then it started drawing in another direction. So there's a flow over there.
If the town of Ringwood caps this, say, and the worst case scenario happens that it contaminates the water, can the town of Ringwood be sued because they chose?
I was asking that question to the council. One meeting I asked.
That's a really good question.
Three times they would not answer me. They kept saying that their environmental attorney kept saying, but there's test wells. We would never make it past these wells. But I kept saying, what if it does? People can sue anybody around here, so wouldn't we be responsible?
Yeah, they'd be responsible. The answer is yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
okay, yeah.
They'd be
So
responsible.
right there, we should think this should be an issue, let's just get out of here.
Yep.
Hey, Hey Chuck, one more question. You said when you were up there, you smelled the methane, but it was more of a cocktail of different gases.
It was heavily synthetic and it burned my eyes.
So did anybody ever test the air coming out of those 5 pockets? Because I've always wondered that.
The EPA did some air testing. Jan, you probably could address this better than me. About 3 or 4 years ago, they came back when requested. But the thing is, you can't come back, set it up for a day and walk away. You have to set up a monitoring station, and it has to be there for a longer period for it to get a proper record. So the latter thing that I just described hasn't been done.
Not even in like an air grab or anything?
No, not to my knowledge.
Even while the EPA was supposedly doing that, I went out there with some students from Montclair State University doing a documentary. One of the students says, it's acetone.
Oh yeah, you can smell the acetone in it. Yeah, that part you can pick up right away. The nail polish remover, you can smell that part.
And how close are the houses to that?
Oh, within walking distance.
Very close, right? I mean,
Within
that
walking
was up there.
There are days where...
I just don't know where you were versus where the house was.
Where Vivian lives, with the heart of those houses up there are days where you can smell the line from there. You smell it in the morning. There are days when you pick it up.
Good ways to see it.
Yeah. So guys, my last thoughts with you guys, do you want to wrap up or go for it? Miss, who spoke when I was?
Lisa, Jen.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed you.
That's okay, I just wanted you to.
I was getting very hot. You missed part of me. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And the thing to take away from this is keep talking about this. Just keep talking about it to as many people as you can bore to tears. Just keep talking about it. Because it's when a thing doesn't get talked, when a story isn't told, the story starts to die. And we can't let more people die. We got to keep this story going. So thank you. This has been.
And we'll see you next Wednesday, Ringwood Library, 7 p.m.